Carl Jung is one of the greatest psychologists in the 20th century. He's often compared with Freud and Adler. He developed the concepts of extroverted and introverted personality, archetypes, and the collective unconscious. His work has been influential in psychiatry and in the study of religion, literature, and related fields. His autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, was first published in 1962 and an English translation appeared in 1963, which was 2 years after Young passed away at the age of 85. There are 12 chapters in this book, each with its unique highlights of different stages and activities in his life. The first chapter, First Years, started with scattered memories, such as he was lying in a pram in the shadow of a tree. He could see Alps from where his parents' house was since young, and one time, after his mother took him to a friend's castle, which was on Lake Constance, the idea became fixed in his mind that he must live near a lake. What follows is four significant memories of his childhood up to the age of 10. First trauma, first dream, first ponder, and first secret. First trauma outlines a childhood episode where Young saw a figure in a strangely broad hat and a long black garment whilst he was playing near his house. He thought it was a member of Jesuit, which was a religious organization. Although later he realized that it was a Catholic priest, it still caused him fear and mistrust in Christian religion. It is noted that in Young's world, the mistrust in Christian religion is different from our conventional debate of whether one is or is not religious. The mistrust that Young had in Christian religion was more on his disagreement of the interpretations of the religious belief and the conventional characterizations of important figures in it, such as that of God, Jesus, and Satan. One of the consequences of this trauma was that he avoided going to church, and when he could not avoid it, he tended to have accidents. While this may sound childish, this type of psychic experience followed Young for his entire life and also was a key driver of his exploration of human psychology. First dream was chiefly on a peculiar image occurred in his dream. The image he saw in his dream was a great throne in the background of a green wall and red carpet. In the middle of the throne standing a phallus of 12 to 15 feet high, made of skin and naked flesh, and with a single eye on the top of it. It was a man-eating phallus. It was a recurring dream since he was 4 to 5 years old, and only 50 years later that he realized it was a symbolic representation of cannibalism that underlines Christian Mass. It was impossible that the image came from his experience given such young age when he had it. Therefore, Young was wondering who was speaking to him, whose mind has devised the dream, and what kind of superintelligence was at work. It was these questions that led to Young's later conviction that there were collective archetypes in human conscious, which do not come from individual experience. First to ponder. Young's childhood was described as lonely. His sister was born 9 years after he was, so he did not have siblings to play with in those early years. He was fond of playing in his parents' garden and often spent a long time there by himself. He described that when he was alone, he sat down on a stone in the garden and then began an imaginary game that went something like this. I am sitting on top of this stone and it is underneath, but the stone also could say, I, and think I am lying here on this slope and he's sitting on top of me. The question then arose, am I the one who is sitting on the stone or am I the one on which he is sitting? Young said the question always perplexed him. I'm sure you would agree with me that most of us have not had thought of such a question. When I first read it, I found the way that Young thought was breathtakingly different from what I knew, and yet I was drawn to his way of thinking. Then came the first secret that Young had. In Young's ninth or 10th year, Young carved a little mannequin and dressed him with a woolen coat, hat, and boots. He also carved a little stone for his mannequin. He placed them in his pencil box and hid it in an attic at the top of his parents' house. Whenever he faced difficult situations, he went to the attic and spent time with his mannequin. He was not aware of the meaning of these actions, but his secret gave him a great sense of security. It was only in his 30s that Young realized that what he did was similar to some ancient rituals documented in early Africa and Australia. This convinced him of the idea of ancient psychic components which entered the individual psychic without direct line of tradition. This secret also formed the climax and conclusion of his childhood. In his own words, there was a sense of eternity in my childhood. This concludes the first chapter. I personally find much of it eye-opening, such as the ponder on the stone and the origin of his theoretical idea of collective archetypes. To me, it speaks to the importance of keeping an inner life and allowing one's inner life to develop and nourish. It is very different from what we experience, where external environment and social expectations have much larger influence on our daily experience and life goals. I like to conclude this video with a prologue of this book. My life is a story of self-realization of the unconscious. I cannot employ the language of science to trace its process, for I cannot experience myself as a scientific problem. Thank you very much for taking your time to watch this video. I hope you find something interesting. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to post. I look forward to seeing you next time.